Hi, Algebra 1. We're going to take what we did with two-way tables from Lesson 1, and now we're going to look at relative frequency tables. So they're going to be very closely related. Now you're just going to see a bunch of percentages. Here we go. We're going to jump to Activity 3 here, and we're looking at some data with some people who had a cold. Some of their cold lasted less than a week. Some of them had a cold that lasted more than a week. And we have Group A and Group B. One of those groups received vitamin C, while the other group took a placebo. And a placebo just means like a sugar pill. Like you're taking a pill, but it's not really going to do anything for you. And so they're trying to decide, does the vitamin C help the cold end quicker or not? Now looking at the data down here, you can see the raw numbers of people that were in each group and if their cold lasted a week or more. But it's hard to really compare here because we have a lot more people in Group B than we do in Group A. And so changing these values into percentages can help us analyze this data better. So that's what relative frequency tables are going to help us do. In the first table you're looking at in your book, we're going to figure out what percentage of all of the people are represented in each part of the table. So in total, there were 16, 17, 27, and 53 people. So that's a total of 113. And you can see they did an example for you where the first group was 16 people and they divided that by your total. This is 113 and they ended up with 0.14, which is 14%. So this is the percentage that would go in that box. So in the next one, I would take 17 divided by our total 113. And I'm going to get approximately 0.15 to 2 decimal places. I'm using the squigglies here because it's approximating. And because it's 0.15, that would be 15%. Here's what the other two relative frequencies end up. And now I'm looking overall at the table. I'm still just seeing that there's a whole lot more people, a higher percentage of people in Group B than Group A. So I haven't really learned anything new yet about whether the vitamin C works or not. So in this table, we're going to make our relative frequencies, our percentages, calculated in a different way. So I wrote this over here on the right, the total of 100% at the end of each row, which means that I'm looking at, of the people whose cold lasts less than a week, right here, what percentage of them were in Group A and what percentage of them were in Group B. So to calculate that, we have 16 in this group. That would be divided by the total of that row, so 16 plus 27. And I get 0.37, which is going to be a percentage of 37%. So over here, I'm going to divide 27 by 16 plus 27, the total of that row. You could write it as 43, that's fine. And we're going to end up with 63% right there. So in the next row, I'm looking at, of the people whose cold lasts less than a week or more, how many of them are in Group A? So I'm going to take that 17, I'm going to divide it by the total of that row, 17 plus 53. In this box here, I end up with 24%, and in this one, I end up with 76%. Notice that those two things would add up to 100% because I want to look at this row as a total of 100%. What percentage of them were in Group A and what percentage of them were in Group B? As I'm looking at the total data here, I'm not still seeing a pattern as far as vitamin C working or not, because I'm still seeing that of the people whose cold lasts less than a week, that a lot of them are in Group B, not so many in Group A. Similarly here for a week or more. Next, we're going to look at, what if we look at the total of how many in Group A had a cold that lasted less than a week or a week or more. So now I put my totals at the bottom because I want my columns to add up to 100%. So for this one, we took 16 divided by the total of that column, 16 plus 17, and I got 0.48 or 48% for the relative frequency. So that means in the one right below it, to find that percentage, I would take 17 divided by the total of that column, or 16 plus 17, you could just have it as 33, and I get 52% right there. And notice that 48% plus 52% is going to add up to my 100%. When I calculate this last row, I get 34% and 66%. They add up to 100%. Here we have the last few questions in this section and the two tables that we've looked at so far. Number 3 is saying the researchers want to know among people whose colds lasted less than a week. And I want you to underline that part because there's a lot of information in these questions and you got to make sure you can pull out what you need. So among the people whose colds lasted less than a week, that's going to be the second table we worked on, and it's this line right here. That's because I'm looking at a total of 100% at the end of this row. So all the people whose colds lasted less than a week, what percentage are in group B? So there's your 63% right there. Number 4 is asking if we think that vitamin C has a small effect on the length of a cold, which group most likely got the vitamin C? So I'm looking at the second table, and yeah, there's a lot of people here that had in group B that had a cold that lasted less than a week, but there's a lot that had a cold that lasted a week or more too. So that's not really telling us much. So if we go to that third table that we just did, and I'm looking at group A, and I have 48% of them had a cold that lasted less than a week, whereas group B only had 34% of them that had a cold that lasted less than a week. So based on that, I'm thinking that group A is the group that received vitamin C.